Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shel shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome back to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash, which is now presently being hosted at the Eretz Chemda Beit Midrash. And I welcome everyone with a very, very warm welcome home to Torah. We are in the Yakar, of course, in Parashat Balak. And for those who are unfamiliar, we encourage you to go to the links below. You can watch some of the previous videos, but most importantly, we hope that you will pick up the Hebrew sheets. It's important to become familiar. I don't think most people really get the nuances of the Torah unless you are familiar with the Hebrew. So with that in mind, please go to the links below and you'll pick up not the color sheets, it'll be just black and white, but I do encourage you to follow along in the Hebrew. So in Parashat Balak, that's in Numbers chapter 22, we're going to just deal with a few verses, 23 through 27 basically. But I can't ask more, just try the Hebrew. So the Yakar begins by quoting a Midrash Tanchuma. So the first thing the Yakar quotes is a Midrash Tanchuma, Simone Avos Herolo. What is it talking about? The background. The background is like this, that when we read these verses that have to do with this donkey of Bilam having I'm going to call it an upgrade. Just like Bilam, who's not a Jew, was upgraded to the level of prophecy, so too his donkey, which is not the level of medaber, it's not a human, it doesn't speak, doesn't communicate the way humans do, that's why we call it a medaber, a human being is a medaber. Nevertheless, it was elevated and it could speak. But what we're actually going to discuss is what happened when I'm going to refer to the she donkey as she, moved off the road or pushed him against the wall or was in a narrow place. These are significant simonim, signs of communication. Even though she could speak, nevertheless, through her actions, and we say actions speak louder than words, so through her actions, we're going to learn a lot. So as the Yakar said, these are simonim that pointed to or showed him something to do with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning Bilam, who is this guy who wants to curse the Jews, he wants to see the downfall of the Jews, nevertheless is being talked to by the donkey. The donkey is basically saying, "You fool, what are you doing? Do you realize what you're doing?" And by showing him Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he's showing him that this is a suicide mission. When you mess with the Jews, just start counting down to the last breath. That's all I can tell you. And this is how it goes. So I'll start with the Yakar, and then we'll go into the actual Midrash itself a little bit. Second line down, it says, V'chi v'telech b'sadeh. So the first thing is that the donkey moved away from the road. Look in source number 1, Numbers 22, verse 23. The she donkey saw the angel of the Lord stationed on the road. So the donkey was on the road. Now she saw the angel with his sword drawn in his hand. So what did the she donkey do? She turned aside from the road. And that's the verse, that's the words we're using. V'teit ha'aton min haderech. She left from the road. V'telech b'sadeh. And then she went into the field. And as the Yakar mentions, the Medrash says, Makom Rachav. It's a wide open space. Very interesting. So she turned off the road and went into the field to a wide open space. And that's where this communication is happening, because the Yakar says, Lomar, it's quoting the Midrash, Shemir Kalel Zera Avram. If you're thinking you're going to go ahead and curse the seed of Avram, Remember, he wants to curse the Jews. Was Abraham the first Jew? For all practical purposes, let's just say he was, but he wasn't, right? So he had more than one child. In fact, he had 6 he sent off to the east, but he had Yishmael besides Yitzchak. So having Yishmael, if you want to curse Abraham, you know what you're going to end up doing? Yimatze lekalel b'nei keturah v'Yishmael. You're going to end up cursing Abraham's other children. Like you want to get the Jews, right? But you end up hurting others. When you hurt the Jews or you attempt to kill the Jews, you're destroying a lot of God's world here. Other people, such as Yishmael. And then the Medrash says, Yitzhak. And guess what? If you're going to start with Yitzhak, you want to curse him. Yamatze geder mizeh ugeder mizeh. That was the phraseology that happened when the donkey got stuck in this, well, it's before the very narrow place, but it is quite narrow. If there is, what he did was, it says, the angel of the Lord stood in the path of the vineyards. The word is bimish'ul hachramim. So there's a path, but along the path there's a geder mizeh, v'geder mizeh. There is a wall, and it's a stone wall. Rashi says anytime it says a geder and it doesn't specify what it is, then it's a stone wall. Like we have in weddings or sometimes in mechitza, we call it geder chai. It's plants or something other than, or geder eitz, whatever it is. But if it's a stam geder, if it's just a regular gedar, and then Rashi says, then it's one made of stone, which is not flexible. Okay. So then the Yakar is continuing to quote the Medrash, V'chi yochol lahatot el Esav, meaning that if you're going to try to curse Yitzhak, Yitzhak had 2 children, right? Yaakov and Esav. So you're not just going to curse the Jewish people, Yaakov, you're going to end up cursing Esav as well. And this is the message that, even nonverbal message that the donkey is conveying to Bilam. Shohesim mitato shlema. Yaakov's bed was complete, was perfect. All of his children were tzaddikim. We didn't have the problem with either Yishmael or an Esav coming out. They were, we're going to call all Jews, all Israelites for that matter. And then it says, Amod b'makom tsar. Meaning that he stood in this very narrow place that you would find in verse 26. He stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn right or left. Avur v'yamod bimkom tsar asher ein derech lin tot yamin usmo. So the Yakar brings down the rest of that verse. Kimitzado, meaning from the Medrash, Kimitzado ein derech lin tot yamin usmo. So it was a very narrow place, and there was no room, there was no place where he could lean to the left or right. That's what the Medrash says, and the Yakar ends this paragraph by saying, Yesh od drachim acherim el hamaforshin. Now I just want to read Rashi right there, because Rashi on source number 1, that would be one of the verses, Numbers 22, I think it's 26, I could be wrong, but it's one of those Rashis. It says, it's the last Rashi on page 1, the Midrash Agada in Tanchuma, which is the one we just read, what made him stop in these 3 places? Again, we spoke about this donkey having the ability to speak, yet she was not conveying this message through speech. She was conveying it through her actions. What made him stop in the 3 places? Bilam ended up stopping in these 3 places. For he, the angel, showed Bilam symbols alluding to the patriarchs. As we said, in the very first verse, in the very first statement, Simone Avos Herolo. So what is this all about? What is this, I'm going to say, non-communication, non-verbal communication, showing him the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? That's what the Medrash says. So the Yakar continues by quoting Rashi. Midichtav Rashi, the very fact that Rashi actually says this idea. Zeh shalosh regalim. So in number 3 on the source sheet, which is Numbers 22, verses 27 and 28, so it says, that, right, the donkey actually does communicate verbally. What have I done to you that you struck me 3 times? So in Hebrew it says zeh shalosh. You would expect it to say pa'amim. Why did you hit me these 3 times? But the verse says zeh shalosh regalim. What is regalim? I mean, when you hear shalosh regalim, you think of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, correct? So Rashi says on that verse that he hinted to him, you seek to uproot a nation which celebrates 3 festivals in the year. Whoa. Now it's kind of coming together. You want to uproot the Jews. The first idea was, listen, if he showed him Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. If you want to uproot them, you're going to end up uprooting, at least if you try to uproot Abraham and Isaac, you're going to end up hurting 3/4 of the world or more, right? We're talking about also B'nai Keturah. So that's the way. You're going to end up basically destroying the world. If you destroy the Jews, you're going to end up destroying the whole world. But then this Rashi says about the Shalosh Regalim, which we already pointed out is a very unusual language, that you're going to uproot those Jews who celebrate the 3 festivals. Now, by the way, I mean, I think most people are familiar with the idea when it comes to Sukkot, that is related to the judgment over water. So the whole world needs water to survive. So that's a severe part of our avoda and our service with the water libations, the Nisu Chamayim. We're actually saving the world through rain. But there's something the non-Jews have to do. By the other holidays, are non-Jews celebrating Pesach? Are they celebrating Shavuos? Not in the same way that they might be, hopefully, celebrating Sukkot. Because as we know, the Navi says that if the representatives, they come up to Jerusalem during Sukkot, then they will see rain in their countries. So there is something related to the non-Jews with Sukkot. But in the meantime, what we are seeing, at least in that Rashi, very clearly, that what Bilam wants to do, and the donkey is having this conversation with him, how dare you try to uproot this people that celebrate these 3 holidays, because it would be the same theme. It would somehow be detrimental to the world. And we're going to have to see how that is. So, as we said in the first line of the second paragraph, and for Rashi wrote, Zeh Shalosh Ragalim, these 3, we're not going to call them festivals, we're going to 3 times that you hit me. By the way, so it does say in these several verses that he hit him 3 times, each one, V'yak or V'yaker. What is the communication of the donkey? Atarotze la'akor uma hogeget shalosh regalim. And we can find this in Midrash Tanchuma number 9, which is number 4 in the source sheet. We can look at it real quick. What have I done to you, the donkey asked, that you struck me these 3 times? Again, shalosh regalim. What was she intimating to him? Exactly what we read in Rashi. You're seeking to uproot a people that celebrates the 3 pilgrimage festivals. Perhaps at this moment, I'll tell you, look in number 5, and really it's number 5. There is a connection that we should all be familiar with, that Avraham was full of chesed, and believe it or not, that is what Passover is all about. It's really a big kindness and chesed, and he is connected. The attribute of Avraham, which is chesed, is connected with Pesach. Yitzhak, which is gevurah, din, and strength, that's connected to the Torah, okay? That's connected to Shavuos, and therefore also the temple and sacrifices, which we know Yitzhak was himself a sacrifice. Yaakov is beautiful, Tiferes, and that refers to the Torah also, which in terms of, it actually also has an attribute of mercy to it, but it's related to Sukkot. So Avraham is related to Pesach, Yitzhak is related to Shavuos, and Yaakov is related to Sukkot, just to keep these 3 holidays in mind. Okay? In the Zohar, it mentions, if you look down below, yes, Pesach actually corresponds to Avraham, because in Genesis 18:6, when he was going to feed the angels, right, knead dough and make cakes, he asked of his wife. So these cakes were of matzah. And many opinions are this actually took place on Pesach. What about Shavuos? How does that correspond to Yitzhak? Because, of course, the great and awesome day of the Revelation, the shofar was blown, and the shofar is connected to the ram of Yitzhak, and you could find the shofar being blown at Mount Sinai at Exodus chapter 19, verse 19. And Sukkos is related to Yaakov in the Chumash when we see that he made Sukkos for his herds in Genesis 33:17. That's the first time Sukkos is ever mentioned in the Torah. So now that we have some more background, going back into the Yakar, he says, when we're going to discuss these ideas, we're going to start with Sukkos. Sukkos, which happens to be in Tishrei, Matchil min Sukkot asher b'chodesh Tishrei, which is the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. It's also speaking about the end of the year. So that's the turning point of the year. Okay? So it says in source number 6, that's Exodus 23:16, specifically speaks about when is the holiday of Sukkot. So in the festival of the harvest, that's going to be Shavuos, the first fruits of your labors, which you will sow in the field, comma, and then it says, and then the festival of the ingathering at the departure of the year, when you gather in the products of your labors from the field. This is talking about Sukkot time. Haga Asaf B'tzeis Hashanah. It's the time of gathering at the end of the year, which we will see. This has to do with also the end times. If people are interested in the end times, this is also referring to that. And now we know why the righteous Gentiles are really involved in Sukkot as well. But the pasuk says, "The asafcha es masecha," you gather in the work of your hands, minha sadeh, from the field. Rashi says there in the bottom line, this is the festival of Sukkot, when you gather in the products of your labor. Remember, during the entire summer, the grain dries out in the fields. And on the festival of Sukkot, they gather them into the house because of the rains that are about to fall. Okay, so now we have the first idea, and he refers this to the pasuk we read in the beginning, V'tei ta'aton min haderech, v'telech b'sadeh. Where did the donkey turn away from? He turned away from the road, and he went by the field. Keep this in mind when it comes to the field, because it's also going to relate to chesed. Okay, we're going to get to it shortly. Ata rotzeh la'akor uma hahogeget hag ha'asif teloi b'sadeh. You want to uproot this people who celebrate the festival of gathering. And what is the festival of gathering dependent upon? It's dependent upon the field. Ubo makrivim Yisrael shivim parim. And what else do we do during Sukkot? We offer up the 70 bulls, keneged shivim umos, parallel to the 70 nations. And what is the donkey communicating? Im kain, if that's the case, right? You're going to uproot this people that celebrate 3 times a year. If that's the case, bitulam garim bitul kol ha'omos, that if you you destroy the Jewish people, you're causing a whole negation to the rest of the world, to the rest of the other 70 nations. And that would not be a good thing, according to this donkey who's communicating with Bilam. And afterwards, it says, "B'mishul hakramim," right? He was traveling in the path of the vineyard, and this is a hint to Hag HaPesach. How is wine compared to Pesach, or relating to Pesach? Zman Yetziat Mitzrayim. We know that Hag HaPesach is the time we left Egypt, but look in Psalms chapter 80, verse 9. That's number 8 on the source sheet. We, the Jewish people, are compared to a vine, to grapes that are uprooted from Egypt. As the verse says, King David, Gefen mi Mitzrayim tasiya, tigaresh goyim titoeha. And not only that, this is one of the things that these non-Jews I don't know what they're called. We call them 7 Canaanite nations. We can call them the Philistines. We can call them, I'm not sure what, I don't want to get too political. Modern day, you know what they are. Okay? And the idea is that a farmer who wants to plant vines, you have to uproot the weeds, the kotzim. You must destroy the roots, the very roots of this infectious weed that just spreads whatever it spreads. You got to get rid of it before you plant the good stuff. And truth is, that's what God did by getting rid of the 7 Canaanite nations. Okay, so I hope you get the hint. So here we go. So back into the Yakar, he mentioned this idea. Second line down in that next paragraph. Geffen mi Mitzrayim tasia, right? That you uprooted the vine from Egypt. V'tigaresh. Tigaresh means exile, expelled. Okay, you expelled the Goyim and you planted the Jewish people in their place. Logic dictates that you uproot the weeds, the tumbleweeds, the thistle, the worthless weeds, and then you plant the geffen. This is basically what the donkey is asking Bilam. You want to switch everything around? You want to curse the Jews? That's ridiculous. It doesn't work like that. V'derech hageffen. Well, okay, there's a deeper idea. How about geffen? What do you do? What is the use of the geffen? It's to make wine or grape juice. Hu nirpas beraglayim. You actually trample upon it. You stamp on it with your feet. I hope you washed your feet first. Ulesof hayayin mapil etzeh harofso sheshoteha. And guess what happens? Even the guy who's using his own feet to trample, if he ends up drinking the wine himself, he's going to fall on his feet. He's basically going to trample over himself when he drinks it. Like it's brought down in Parshas V'yeshev, there are many examples, dimyonot, of the Jewish people and how we are compared to grapes. But we spoke before that the Jewish people, when you squeeze them, similar to olives, similar to grapes, when you squeeze us, guess what? The best of us come out. So for all of those who think that they're doing us a favor, they're doing the world a favor. Okay, let's not get into it right now. V'kulam shayachin levatel das bilam. But all these ideas of why the grapevine is so good, why the Jewish people are compared to grapes, is in order to negate, to uproot, to disrupt what Bilam had in mind. V'ramaz lahaga Pesach. This actually hints to the holiday of Pesach. What do we do on Pesach? Shabo shoitim arba koiso shel yayin. I want you to keep in mind a few things. Number one, what is wine? Wine is the gematria of 70. Yud, Nun. We're going to talk about this. And what is wine? Wine can be used for the kos of salvation, but also at the same time we could see that it could be quite damaging, and we're going to talk about that. And that's going to be keneged kos yeshuos liYisrael. Shinim shulagefen. This idea of the 4 cups of wine, there's 4 languages of redemption that we use that are symbolic of the cup of salvation, and that's going to be for Israel, who are compared to the geffen, to the wine, to the grapes. Uksiv arba lashono shel geula. We see there are 4 languages of redemption. Now I do have on the sheet here for you. Let's go to number 10. There's 4 languages of redemption in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. It mentions God said, I'm going to take you out, v'hotzeiti etchem, I'm going to remove you. He says, I'm going to save you, right? V'hitzalti etchem. He also says, I'm going to redeem you, v'ga'alti etchem. Now those are 3 of the 4 languages. And that's all in one verse. Happens to be, just notice that the 4th statement about redemption is a separate verse, which we will deal with. The kakti eschem, God says, I will actually take you. And so these 4 languages of redemption, this is why we drink the 4 cups. Look in Psalms 116, verse 13, which is right after that. Kos Yeshuas Esu v'Shem Adonai Ekra. I shall lift up a cup of salvations, and I will call in the name of the Lord. This is what we do. This is what we do. We praise Hashem for everything that He's given us. And going back to number 16 now, the Balaturim, he mentions that this idea that it is a separate verse. Okay, look first of all in the middle paragraph, the last word, L'kachti gematria, the gematria that I shall take is the same gematria as a poor person. You should not give him less than 4 cups of wine. So if someone comes and they're unfortunate, they don't have enough money for wine, make sure that if you don't have enough money, get together with your friends, make sure that your fellow Jew can celebrate Pesach with kavod, with honor and glory. But one of the things he mentions down below in that same thing, that same comment, is that the 3 languages of Geula are in one verse. And then you have the L'kachti, I shall take, it's in a separate verse. And this is we're going to see the same thing when it comes to different animals. There are, and look at number 17 in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 7 through 8. So 7 mentions 3 of the animals. There's 4 animals altogether that the Torah specifically says you can't eat in these 2 verses. And 3 of them, the camel, the hyrax, and the hare, in Hebrew, the gamal, the arnevet, and the shafan, they are in one verse. And then you have the chazir, the pig, is in a different verse. We're going to see the significance. I know you may say, well, what's the big deal? But there's a very important significance to that we will see shortly. We're back in the Yakar, where he mentions that we're on the top line, it says, Arba Lashonos Shel Geula. There are these 4 languages of redemption. Ukenegdem HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mashke Leumos Arba Kosos Tara'elah. And parallel to that, Hashem feeds or causes to drink the non-Jews this thing called poison. Now it's in Midrash Rabbah 88.5. So if you look at number 12 for a second, the Or Sameach quotes this idea about the 4 cups. He says clearly that there are 4 languages of redemption, but there are also 4 languages of not such good stuff. If you look where it says, 3rd line down, and I put the cup into the hand of Pharaoh, that in Genesis chapter 40, that's referring to the beginning of the slavery. Okay, so that's where things began. And then there's another opinion, 3 lines down, this is referring to the cup of God's fury, that not only the Egyptians would drink, but as we say, there are future malchut, future kingdoms that are going to subjugate the Jews. So you look in Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 15, take the cup of wine of fury from my hand and make all the nations who persecute you drink it. Do you guys realize, I mean, if there's anybody listening, there's non-Jews, this doesn't sound very good, okay? Jeremiah 25, 15. The next one is Jeremiah 51, 17, that says, the nations have drunk from the wine in the cup of the hand of Babylon, therefore they have become mad. Okay, also, not very nice. Guys, be careful. Also in Psalm 75, 9, there's a cup in the hand of God, I think, but it's dregs. All the wicked of the earth shall drink. Again, this is like a cup of poison. And then the last verse that we're going to deal with here, actually is 2 more. Psalms 11:6 refers to, upon the wicked he will rain snares, fire, and brimstone, and the tempestuous winds shall be the portion of their cup, referring again to a cup of poison. However, on the other side, when it comes to Israel, the verses refer to 4 cups of redemption. Obviously, we have this idea that when the Jewish people are up, the non-Jews are down. And it all has to do with us, whether we're up or down. It's nothing, they're just reacting. So we got to get our act together. But in Psalms 16:5, I think I just read that one for you. No. God, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. Famous verse. Also Psalms 23:5, you anoint my head with oil, my cup is overflowing. And of course, 116:13, which we read already, I lift up my cup of salvations. Kos Yeshuos Esa, U'Shem Hashem Ekra. Okay, so number 13 in Bereshis Rabbah 88:5, it basically says the same thing with a lot of the same verses. Some of them are a little different. I encourage you to look at that. Back into the Yakar. We are the last line of the first paragraph. So the communication of this donkey is saying to Bilam, what are you doing? It's suicide. If you want to curse the Jews, you're cursing yourself and everyone else in this world. You want the non-Jews to somehow be over the Jews? Once that happens, it's downfall for everybody. Okay, the Akakach. Next paragraph. One of the things that the donkey did, it stood in its place. That was very narrow. The Yamod b'makom tsar asher ein derek lintot yamin usmol. It stood in a very narrow place, and there was no space to lean neither right nor left. And what is this parallel to? Keneged atzeres. How is this parallel to Shavuos? Shabo kiblu es Torah, because it was on Shavuos that we received the Torah. What does it say about the Torah in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 16? Am I right? Number 14 on the source sheet. So it's talking about the Torah. Oirech yamim biyamina, the length of its days are to the right. Ubismola oishev kavod, and to its left are riches and honor. It's talking about the Torah itself. So really, if you think about it, what he's really trying to say is the Torah, it is quite rigid. I'm not going to say it's flexible, but it's wide. So there's a gamut of what's permissible. As long as you remain within what's permissible, great. You cannot go too far to the left or too far to the right. So there are gvulot, there are restrictions. So that's how the Yakar explains that it's talking about Shavuos, because we received the Torah then. Malek kiblu Torah, Yisrael had Torah. Do you know what would have happened if the Jews never accepted? God offered the whole world. You want the Torah? Oh, what's in it? It's only the Jews that said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we'll take it, blindsided. Okay? Ha'olam choizer tohu v'vohu. The Gemara in Shabbos, Peches Amud Aleph, tells us that if the Jews did not accept the Torah, the whole world would revert to void and nothingness. Just imagine what Bilam wants to do. He wants to uproot the Jews. He wants to curse the Jews. He doesn't realize that if we would negate the Torah, if we stop keeping the Torah, what would happen? It's suicide. And there he goes. Hayu kol umos b'telim. So if the world went back to nothingness, where does it leave the non-Jews? They're also in a state of nothingness. They can't exist without a globe to stand on. Again, the communication of the donkey is, why do you want to uproot this people? How do you expect what's going to happen? They're the ones that are hogeget hagzeh. They celebrate Shavuos. Sheyesh bo tzark lekol le'umos u'lekol ha'nimtzaim shebamala u'shebamata. There's actually a need for the world. Anybody who exists knows the world is necessary to exist. For them to exist, why disrupt the order? This is the communication that the donkey, it's a non-communication, but nevertheless, he's communicating to him through all these stops and all these moves that you're going about the whole thing all wrong. You destroy the Jews, you destroy yourselves. The Yakar actually says, Yecholiot, it's very possible, Shagam b'mishol kramim remezeh. Even the idea of going in between the path, through the path of the vineyard, hints to this idea. So not only Shavuos, but also Pesach. Why? We already mentioned the idea of a vineyard. V'shoitim bo arba kosos. Right? That you would end up drinking 4 cups. Keneged arba machiot. They're parallel to the 4 kingdoms, the 4 evil kingdoms that subjugate the Jewish people. How many are there? There's 4. But also, what do they represent? It says V'shel Yayin. And it also represents wine. Obviously, a vineyard represents wine. I already mentioned the gematria of wine, Yud Yud Nun, Kemispar Shivim. It's Keneged 70. And what do we know? The number 70, Keneged Shivim Umois. It's parallel to the 70 nations. Ubito Zeh. Now, if you get rid of the Jews, Gam came Bito Kol Shivim Umos. All 70 end up being destroyed as well. I'd like to go to the Balaturim on Genesis 25, verse 26. So this is when Esav was born, right? It says over there, V'achre Cain Yotzo Achiv. Okay, what does that mean? After his brother emerged, and I want you to focus on the word Cain. Cain is gematria of 70. So it was basically through Esav's birth, this number 70 came into existence. V'yado ochezit be'akev Esav. And his hand was grasping the heel of Esav. V'yikra Shemo Yaakov. We're talking about the one who's grabbing the heel of Esav. He's going to be called Yaakov. Yitzhak happened to be 60 years old when he was born. Now, in the commentary on this Balaturim, he says clearly the word Chain is Oila Shivim. It comes out to the gematria of 70. Kolomars, to tell us that Achre Cain, meaning after, thusly, after 70 Umos Yotze Achiv, the 70 come out as a result of Esav. Esav is somehow going to be responsible for these 70 nations. Sha'ayin Umos Hein Chutz Mi Yaakov. We're talking about these 70 nations aside from Yaakov. The next paragraph says V'yado, right? He grabbed it with his hand, and there's a few explanations, but the last one says, Shebishas Leidasan Ramazlo Sheyiflu Biyado Umois. There is this hint to the idea that when he was born, that he fell into the hands or under the control of the nations. He brings down a pasuk from Ovadia and the saviors shall ascend Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esav, and the end of days, the mount of Esav will be judged, and the Lord shall have his kingdom. So this is what we say every day, and this is something we're looking forward to. On the bottom right, just keep in mind that the word Esav is like Ayin Shav. He's equal to 70. As we said, he somehow rules over 70, or because of him you have the 70 nations have power. As it says, Esav Ayin Shav, Zehahishlim La'ayin Umos, Shava Shibarati Bolami. Okay, now the word Shav here with an aleph could mean and usually means something of futility and vanity. That, unfortunately, that's the way we're going to have to look at it. V'yikra Shemo Esav in 22, and he was called Esav. Ha Shava Shibarati Ba'olami. Basically, the word Esav is Asoy Liot Shava V'daso Shav. His whole idea is that he created a worthless, the word Shav is worthless religion. Okay, very important to know. Okay. I want to look at the bottom on that page, really small, on Gemara Sukkos 55b. Okay? Now, the Gemara actually says on the left side, right, we bring the 70 bulls on Sukkos that are parallel to the 70 nations. So the reason, Rabbi Eliezer searched for the reason specifically why you would have 70 korbanot, 70 cows, and not, there's nothing else that symbolizes the goyim in any of the other korbanos, any of the other offerings, except for these. These are the 70 offerings of the bulls that are parallel to the 70 nations. So the Orach Laner explains that by all the korbanos, they're going to be always even throughout the year, okay? But what happens on Sukkot? They diminish. The first day you start with 13, and then 12, down to 7. Do you understand? Over the 7 days of Sukkah, there are diminishing. amount of cows, bulls. So he says, haparim ma'itim v'hochim. They're continuously being diminished. Therefore, that's why Rabbi Eliezer wanted to know why. Why is this so different? V'yeshev shem keneged, and he answered, because they're parallel to the 70 umos, and not compared to what we normally bring each and every day. And you could have brought, right, there's 7 days, they could have just brought 10 each day. 10 times 7 is 70. Why is it starting at 13 going down to 7? That's what the Torah says. It's not rabbinic, it's not made up. It literally is what the Torah says. Should be yachad shivim. If you brought 10 each day, it would have been 70. The whole idea, it's a siman, it's a sign, v'ramaz, that even the nations diminish, like it's brought down in the Midrash, like we just spoke about. He brings that the Gra says the prime 70 nations, right? What are the 70 nations? You got 70 of them, but there's got to be leaders. There's something prime, that's Esav and Yishmael, out of the 70 nations. And how do we know? So when you read these verses that have to do with the Musaf offering during the 70 bulls, specifically says, by the way, there's 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7 on the first and second and fourth day. So you have 13 on the first day, you have 12 on the second, and the fourth day of 10. That's exactly 35. And the words Sa'ir appears. And then, well, actually, that's Sirizim. And then you have 11. When you bring 11, you bring 9, 8, and 7. So then you have Sirizim. So by one of them, by 35 of them, it's the word Seir is used. By the other 35, Sirizim is used. And the Gra explains that this is referring to 35 are under the dominion of Esav, and 35 are under the dominion of Yishmael. These are the two prime nations of the world. So if you wanted to curse, we start in the beginning, that if the donkey is trying to explain, you want to curse Abraham and Isaac, you're going to end up cursing the whole world basically, because all the nations, the 70 nations, well in this case it would probably be 68, but they're under these two prime nations, Esav and Yishmael. So let's just go through it. Nimtzu lamed parim keneged Esav, v'lamed he keneged Yishmael. So you have 35 cows that are under Esav, 35 cows under Yishmael. It says Seir Izim keneged Yishmaelim, against the parallel to the Arabs. V'sir stam, Seir meaning goat without the word Izim is keneged Esav. Ubizeh bir shebiyom rishon. So the first day and the second day and the fourth day, the Torah actually says Seir Izim. Okay, and ubishloshtam biyachad. And if you add the 13th day, the 12th day, and the 10th day together, you have 35, and they're parallel to Yishmaelim. Whereas the Yud Gimel, and you have the Yud Bet, and you have the 10th of that we just said, and you skip the rest, fine. Then you come out with 35. Ubishar hayamim keneged Esav, the Koirach Sa'ir. So when it says Seir Izim, that's referring to Yishmael. When it's just Stam Sa'ir, says just the goat, then it's referring to the children of Esav. Going back for the last paragraph in the Yakar, he says, it's very possible to explain the following. When it says in English, these 3 times, you hit me these 3 times, it doesn't say pa'amim, it says ragalim. Zeh shalosh ragalim. What is that? What is a regal? A regal, yeah, it's a foot. It could be used as pilgrimage, as we've been discussing, but it can also be used as a pillar. The world was established on 3 pillars: Torah, Avoda, and Gemelos Chasadim, and acts of kindness. The donkey is conveying a message. Why would you want to uproot a nation whose whole existence is to hold the whole world up through the 3 things that hold the world up, which we already said is Torah, Avoda, and Gemelos Chasadim. Hainu shalosh raglei ha'olam. These are the 3 pillars of the world. Torah, Avoda, Gemilas Chasadim, like it says in Pirkei Avot. This is actually the second Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, Mishnah 2. Shimon Tzaddik Haya Omer. What did he say? Simon the righteous was among the last of the Anshe Knesset Gedola, and he would say, on these three things the world stands: Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim. On Torah, the service of God, and deeds of kindness. So based on that, you destroy them, you destroy the whole world. Ki bitulam harus kol ha'olam. Ramaz lo Gemilas Chasadim. Now, remember I mentioned earlier on when it says he went to the field is where chesed is done, right? We just got finished reading Ruth not too long ago. We know the chesed is done in the fields, and he explains how. Ki ikar Gemilas Chasadim min hasadeh al yedei trumos, maisros, leket, shikha, peah. Through our tithing, through the different trumas we're giving to the Kohen and the Levi, to the poor, to bring up to Yerushalayim, the leket, the different agricultural things that are left over for the poor or set aside for the poor. Okay, so that is when the donkey traveled in the way of the field. He was getting that message across. You're uprooting the people who keep these three pillars alive. What about Avodas Beis HaMikdash? By the way, when it says Avodah, service, it's referring to prayer, but prayer is based on the whole thing of Avodah. We don't bring up Korbanos Stam. It has to do with our relation with God. It has to do with prayer. So, how is the Beis HaMikdash compared to service, obviously? Shanim Shala Kerem. Somehow it's related to the vineyard. I don't know if you're aware of this. He doesn't bring it down. He does. So it's hinted to the idea that it says that he went into the paths within the vineyard. And Rashi says over there, in Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 4. So look at number 19. When it says, he brought me to the banquet hall in Hebrew, Haviani el Beis Hayayin. So why, remember, Beis Hayayin means a banquet hall. But it's referring to, this is a love story of the temple itself. Rashi says it's the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. But I want you to know something else. It's the Beis Hayayin, again, 70. As we know that the temple will be called, and should be called, and Mizrat Hashem, soon in our days, a house of prayer for all people. Okay? We also see Ze Oel Moed, as the Yakar says. And regarding that, it says in Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 12 and 13, chapter 7, verse 12 to number 20 on the source sheet. Come, my beloved, let us go out to the field, and let us arise early to the vineyards. Look what Rashi says. Let us arise early to the vineyards. These are the synagogues and the study halls, because they're called Beit HaMikdash Ma'at. These are the small temples, so to speak. And it says, let us see whether the vine has blossomed. That's talking about the young students of the Torah who are basically growing and developing just like the baby fruit. So the Yakar ends off by mentioning, what about that place that says a Makam Tsar? It's a very narrow place where you don't have the room to move left or right. That refers to the Torah, as we explained before, that when the Torah is quite rigid to a certain extent, and there is a gamut of what's permissible, as long as you remain within that gamut, then you're not traveling too much to far left or right, you're in good shape. Okay, so look, there's a lot here. We kind of ran through it quite quickly. I pray that you go through it and really become familiar with these ideas, but basically the bottom line is there's no hope for the Gentiles that want to destroy the Jewish people, right? If you can't beat them, join them. And I'm telling you, you can't beat us, you might as well join us. And I'm not asking you to convert. What I'm asking you to do is to at least don't hate us, right? In that sense. What you need to do, and I'm saying what you need to do, is at least stop hating us. And then what you could do is join us in our mission, meaning be a vessel to a vessel. Help us accomplish what we need to accomplish. Don't hinder us. That's like lesson number 1. Don't hinder us. You want to join us and help us further? Bavakasha. we're here, we're going to be doing our mission, we're here anyway. So you might as well, there's a lot of hope if you do join us for yourself. We're an eternal people, we're a prophetic people, we've been around for a long time, we've been through it all, we've seen the Babylonians, we've seen the Persians, and they're gone. So look, I don't know how long America has, I honestly don't know, but B'ezrat Hashem, they've been very good to the Jews for so long. We hope that they make the right choices, and they will continue to be kind to the Jews, and B'ezrat Hashem will see the true Mashiach soon in our days, the ingathering the exiles, and the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash soon in our days. B'mher v'yameinu, amen, Selah. Have a great Shabbos and a great life. Kol Tuv.
Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion,